In the early morning darkness of London, long before most people had opened their eyes, a woman stood in the street, aimed a narrow tube at an upstairs bedroom window, and fired a dried pea at the glass. She was not attacking the house. She was doing her job. Her name was Mary Smith, and hundreds of workers reportedly paid her to wake them before their shifts. Every morning, she walked through working-class neighborhoods with a pea shooter, sending tiny projectiles towards selected windows until a sleepy face appeared behind the curtain. It was an alarm service with legs, personal delivery, and absolutely no snooze button. And Mary was not alone. Across industrial Britain and Ireland, people known as knocker-uppers earned money by waking other people for work. Some carried short sticks for doors. Others used long bamboo poles to reach upper-floor windows. A few scratched the glass with wire. Mary simply chose the approach that made sleeping through the alarm feel slightly more dangerous. It sounds like the first alarm clock was a person, but that is not quite true. Alarm devices existed centuries before Mary Smith. Ancient water clocks could trigger sounds. Mechanical clocks with alarm functions appeared in Europe long before the Industrial Revolution. In 1787, American clockmaker Levi Hutchins built an alarm that rang at 4 in the morning, although it could not be adjusted to any other time. In 1847, Antoine Radier patented an adjustable mechanical alarm clock. So why, decades later, were human beings still walking through freezing streets and throwing peas at windows? Because inventing a technology and making it affordable, reliable, and ordinary are completely different achievements. For many workers, an alarm clock was still too expensive, too unreliable, or simply unavailable. But the factory did not care whether the device beside your bed was affordable. The factory cared whether you arrived on time. That is where the real story begins. For most of human history, waking was influenced by daylight, temperature, household movement, animals, bells, and the people around you. Earlier societies still had schedules and could be highly disciplined. But there is a difference between organizing time and requiring thousands of people to begin work at the same precise minute. The Industrial Revolution did not invent time, it changed who controlled it. As factories, mills, mines, docks, and railways expanded, work became increasingly organized around the clock. A machine could not politely wait because one worker had slept badly. A production line could not begin whenever the neighborhood felt awake. Shifts had fixed starting points, and lateness could mean docked wages, punishment, or losing the job entirely. Suddenly, waking up was no longer just a biological event, it was an economic responsibility. The human body, unfortunately, had not been informed about the new policy. Inside the brain is a biological timing system that helps coordinate sleep, alertness, hormones, appetite, and body temperature across roughly 24 hours. Light and darkness are among its strongest signals. When evening arrives, the body begins preparing for sleep. As morning light appears, the system gradually supports waking and alertness. A factory whistle operates on a simpler biological principle: it does not care. If your shift began before sunrise, your employer's clock could demand full consciousness while your body was still operating as though the night had not ended. Today, we might call that a scheduling problem. In an industrial town, it could become an unemployment problem. This created a strange gap in the market. Workers needed accurate waking, but many could not yet depend on a personal machine. The solution was to hire another human being whose entire business was not oversleeping. A customer would arrange a time and pay a small recurring fee. The knocker-upper then built a route through the neighborhood, almost like a delivery worker carrying nothing except punctuality. At the correct house, they tapped the door or window. Some would knock only a few times and move on. Others reportedly stayed until they saw movement inside. Imagine the awkwardness of that service. You are asleep. A stranger begins tapping your window. You ignore it. The stranger continues. You pull a blanket over your head. The stranger has been professionally trained by poverty and early morning weather to outlast you. Eventually, your face appears behind the curtain, not because you are arrested, but because someone outside has made sleeping more exhausting than waking up. The long poles were especially useful in narrow streets lined with multi-story homes. A skilled knocker-upper could target the correct upper window without waking every household nearby. That accuracy mattered. Waking a paying customer was business. Waking 6 non-paying families at 4:30 in the morning was a fast way to receive customer feedback from the entire street. In some mining communities, workers even left shift information showing when they needed to be awakened. This was not random noise. It was a schedule managed house by house, window by window. In modern language, this was a personalized notification service. The notifications were physical, the privacy settings were curtains, and the customer support department was standing outside with a stick. Mary Smith's pea shooter made the profession especially memorable. Instead of carrying an enormous pole through London, she could aim dried peas at upper windows. The method was lightweight, precise, and probably impossible to explain without sounding like a children's prank. But it was serious work. Her customers included people whose wages depended on reaching docks and factories on time. A few pence paid to a knocker-upper could protect an entire day's earnings. For workers living close to the edge, that was not a novelty purchase. It was insurance against a morning mistake they could not afford. This is what makes the profession more than a funny historical fact. The knocker-upper existed at the exact point where industrial discipline had become powerful, but personal technology had not yet caught up. Society had developed an urgent need for precise waking before it had developed a cheap machine that could provide it to everyone. So it temporarily turned people into machines. And that raises the question almost everyone asks the moment they hear about this job. Who woke the knocker-upper? There was no universal answer. Some organized their sleep around the work, stayed awake through the night, or slept later in the day. Others relied on routines, nearby activity, or another person. But the funniest possible answer is also the least useful. Perhaps there was another knocker-upper, because then someone had to wake that person. And eventually the entire country would have been arranged in one enormous chain of people knocking on the next person's window, leading to one mysterious individual at the beginning who simply never slept. The truth is less dramatic. A person whose job began in the very early morning could structure life around that schedule, just as night shift workers do today. The strange part was not that one person could wake early. The strange part was that hundreds of other people were paying that person because their own livelihoods now depended on waking at an exact time. The knocker-upper did not disappear the moment the alarm clock was invented. Technologies rarely replace old systems instantly. Early alarm clocks could be expensive, difficult to maintain, limited in function, or beyond the reach of poorer households. People continued using the solution they knew and trusted. A human alarm had advantages. It could travel to your house. It could adjust to a different waking time. It could confirm that you had actually responded. It did not stop working because one small internal spring had broken. It also had disadvantages. It required payment. It had to walk through rain. It could become ill. And in Mary Smith's case, it could presumably run out of ammunition. As manufacturing improved, mechanical alarm clocks became cheaper and more common. The service that once required a person in the street could now be performed by a small object beside the bed. The machine did not need a route, a coat, or sixpence at the end of the week. It could wake the same person every morning without becoming tired or questioning its life choices. The profession gradually faded, although knocker-uppers reportedly survived in some industrial communities far longer than most people would expect. The machine had finally won, but the machine did not remove the pressure that created the job. It brought that pressure indoors. The person outside the window disappeared. The command remained, "Wake up now. Your shift is beginning. Your train is leaving. Your class is starting. Someone else's schedule has reached your bedroom." That may help explain why the sound of an alarm can feel so deeply offensive even when we were the ones who set it. Waking is not always an instant switch from unconsciousness to perfect alertness. Researchers use the term sleep inertia for the temporary grogginess, confusion, slower reaction time, and reduced mental performance that can occur after awakening. The brain is awake, but not every system has reached full operating speed. This is why a person can silence an alarm, place the phone somewhere completely irrational, return to sleep, and later investigate the event as though another suspect entered the room. Your morning self is technically you, but it may not yet have access to the full management team. The effect can be stronger after too little sleep, at biologically difficult hours, or when waking abruptly. Meanwhile, the clock demands immediate competence. It expects you to understand numbers, make decisions, remember responsibilities, and stand upright, sometimes within seconds of being removed from a dream in which you were arguing with a talking refrigerator. The conflict is not simply between laziness and discipline. It is between two timing systems. One is biological, shaped by light, darkness, sleep pressure, and the body's internal rhythms. The other is social, shaped by factories, schools, transport systems, appointments, global business, and the agreed belief that 8,000 means 8,000 even when every cell in your body is negotiating for 8,017. Modern alarms can use light, vibration, music, or gradually increasing sound. But they have also become far more powerful. Mary Smith had to stand outside one house at a time. Your phone can wake you, display messages, show the news, reveal your bank balance, remind you of a meeting, and inform you that someone you barely remember has already exercised before sunrise. Within 10 seconds of opening your eyes, the entire modern world can enter the room. The old knocker-upper delivered one message, "Get up." The modern alarm delivers that message, then presents evidence that everyone else may already be ahead of you. And yet, there is something strangely human about the old system. A person stood outside because another person needed to keep a job. The service existed inside a community. The knocker-upper knew which window belonged to which worker, which shift began early, and which customer required more determined knocking. The arrangement was mechanical in purpose, but social in practice. The alarm clock was more efficient because it removed the human relationship. It did not need to know who you were. It did not care whether you were exhausted. It did not know what happened yesterday. It simply rang. That efficiency is the quiet center of the entire story. The first alarm clock was not literally a person. Alarm mechanisms are much older than the knocker-upper profession. But for generations of workers, the first alarm they personally depended on may indeed have been another human being standing in the cold. Not because people of the past were foolish, not because they had failed to invent clocks, but because society had created a new demand faster than ordinary technology could meet it. The factory required punctual bodies. The body followed older rhythms. The knocker-upper stood between them, tapping on glass, translating industrial time into a sound a sleeping human could not ignore. Eventually, the tapping became a bell. The bell became an electronic beep. The beep became a song selected from a phone. And now the device beside your bed may be more advanced than every clockmaker of the 19th century could have imagined. But each morning, beneath all that technology, it is still delivering the same old message that once arrived through a bedroom window. The world has decided that your day begins now.